Here at the main Edible Acres site, we're getting close to wrapping up on fall shipments. And so my attention's starting to turn on late fall, early winter garden and orchard development. And so I thought I would document the process here because it's going to be a relatively large project. And for my own sake, I'd like to see the before and the during and the after. And I thought folks might enjoy following along. You may want to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, because basically what I'm going to be doing is documenting the process of coming through this whole glade in here and doing some really thoughtful and selective thinning, doing pollarding on black locust that I planted 8 years ago, and establishing the future succession in this space. I want to get into that a little bit more detail right now. So we're towards the southern end of the 6-acre Edible Acres property, towards the east and southern end. That's actually the southern boundary line. I have a woven wall that goes around the entire property, which I talk about in other videos. And if you can imagine, in the summer of 2008, when my family first bought this property, this whole area, for the most part, was a few Scots pine, a few spruce, tons of spruce actually, and very little understory. All of this clearing and the locusts that were planted I did in the year 2009, 2010. All of these whips that are growing, and now they've grown enough where we can be considering harvesting them for firewood and polewood and thinking through what the next level of succession is. And my wife Sasha really loves pears, and I love plums and apples and all that fun stuff. So the idea is to go through this area and pollard each of the locusts. You can see these are low pollards done last year, and this is the whip response that I've been shaping up. And so the idea is to go through this whole area and clear the locust to release nitrogen into the soil, release light from the canopy. You can see right now the locust dominates the canopy pretty thoroughly. So these will all be put into a pollard and managed that way. And in between the locust will be future trees like plums, pears, apples, and the like. Don't mind the mess behind, that's my potting shed, pun intended. It's where I store all the pots that I use for the nursery. But you can see here, locust, locust. This locust I cut, and I planted an apple here, and the apple is taking the canopy now. And so that pattern will be repeated throughout. And the idea of pollarding these locusts, cutting them at about 5 or 6 feet high this time of year, late November, early December, when they're dormant, is that they'll resprout, and I can either let them continue to grow and have thin gauge firewood that we can harvest on a continual rotation, or keep cutting them back until they die. And the spaces in between them will now have a tremendous amount more light, and all of the root die-off from these locusts will provide nitrogen and fertility for the future plants that will be going into this area. The scope of this project is going to be relatively large as far as the scale that I normally operate on. It'll be about a ½ acre in total that I really modify heavily. This Scots pine will be coming out. This spruce will be coming out. All of this overstory locust will be pollarded. In this area, the locust will be pollarded. The cherries will also be pollarded. The hawthorns that we have throughout, you can see one growing there, there. Those will be cut as pollards as well, so that next year when they send up new shoots, I can graft more pears and apples onto them. You can see, for example, this was a hawthorn that I cut, and I'll select for a few of these shoots that look the most vigorous and healthy, let them grow one more year, and then I should be able to graft into those and convert the hawthorns over to fruit production as well. All in all, I would suspect this area should be able to receive upwards to 50 plus trees, semi-dwarf to relatively larger rootstock, long-term, long-lived fruit trees. And then we'll also be intercropping those with sea buckthorn for nitrogen fixation, herbaceous companionship and support plants that will flank each of the trees, and then minor fruits as well. So there'll be raspberries, black-cap raspberries, thornless blackberries, currants, haskcaps, all that designed into this space as well. So kind of soak in what it looks like right now. I'll document again before we start doing the clearing, and if I can set up a tripod and such, I might even do some time lapse to show the process of cutting these trees, extracting pole wood as appropriate, firewood as appropriate, and then taking the tops and weaving this brush wall into a much more dense scenario. I've learned my lesson though that you can't, well, not you, I cannot plant trees and expect the deer to not get to them. So let me take a shot at what I'm doing to deal with that. It's kind of a new era of actually protecting these young trees. So right now I'm just staging them as I can make the time to create them in the evenings. This is some orchard stock fencing. I actually called a local, relatively large-scale fencing company, spoke with the owner, and worked out an exchange where I'm bartering site consultation and perennial crops to him in exchange for offcuts of their fencing. It's really nice, sturdy, strong fencing, and if I cut them into 4 or 5 foot diameter rings, they are self-standing. So we can plant, right now they're just staged here, there won't be at this spacing, but you can imagine planting a pear tree and dropping one of these over. Maybe I'd drive a stake on either side just to tie it off, but these will be my way of actually keeping the deer out from these young trees. Once they're 8-10 feet tall and I prune all the laterals off so they get a little bit taller, they won't need the fencing, and then we can just slip it up and over and put it on new trees. But I'm going to generate about 50 or 60 of these and stage them in the woods out of the way from where the clearing will happen, and then as we plant I can simply drop those onto the trees and protect them from the deer. The rabbits, the mice, the voles I plan on protecting with herbaceous companionship. So we'll co-plant garlic and anise hyssop, lemon balm, some thorny blackcap raspberries and the like to protect the trees physically and aromatically. But really it's deer that are the biggest pressure for us and the biggest hurdle towards long-term establishment of trees in this site. So I'm designing in the actual fencing. So you can see there's some more pockets of fencing here or there, just out of the way. So that's about it for now. I will come back to this when we're ready to start actually doing some of the work. I just thought this would be a nice way to introduce the concept in advance. It's going to be a relatively dramatic difference in this space, and I hope you enjoy following along and learning from it, and please let me know what your feelings are on it. Thank you very much for watching.